I never thought I'd be the kind of person to outsmart an entire HOA, but here we are. It all started when I noticed some land clearing crews working a little too close to my property line. At first, I figured it was a mistake someone misread. The survey, maybe, but as weeks passed, they didn't stop. Instead, dozens of brand new homes started popping up. Streets were paved, mailboxes installed, and families began moving into homes built right on what I knew, without a doubt, was my land. See, most people would panic. Maybe call a lawyer, maybe even give up, but not me. I had a paper trail, years of property tax records, and most importantly, a plan. What the HOA didn't know was that the parcel they built on had never legally changed hands. Not once. They assumed the land had transferred ownership during a messy estate sale decades ago, but it hadn't. And while they were busy selling homes and patting themselves on the back, I was quietly letting them walk right into the biggest trap they could. Imagine, you might be wondering, how did 96 homes end up on land they didn't own? And how on earth did no one catch it sooner? Well, that's the part that gets real interesting. The HOA didn't just overlook a detail, they ignored a massive legal oversight. Hey, and every move they made played right into mine. The best part? Didn't have to lift a finger until it was too late for them to back out. In this video, I'll take you through exactly how it all unfolded from the first red flag. I noticed the jaw-dropping moment they realized the entire subdivision was built on a ticking time bomb. And believe me, the fallout was just beginning. Stick around, because you're not going to believe how deep this mess goes. It all goes back to my grandfather. He bought the land in the late 60s, about 80 acres of untouched hills and fields, just outside town. Over the years, the city grew, and the edges of development crept closer, but our land stayed the same. My family kept it clean, fenced, and well documented. We had the original deed, every updated survey, and had been paying taxes on it like clockwork. Most of the neighbors knew better than to mess with us. But things changed when a new HOA popped up with big ambitions and bigger pockets. About 5 years ago, the property next to mine went into foreclosure. That's when the confusion started. The HOA bought the foreclosed land through some LLC and immediately began talking about expansion: 96 homes, green spaces, even a clubhouse. I kept quiet at first, thinking it wouldn't touch me. But then the bulldozers started carving into the edge of our woods. That's when I pulled out the surveys, old boundary markers, and even satellite images. I realized the construction was bleeding into our property, first by a few feet. Then entire foundations were being poured on my side of the line. I tried talking to the contractors, but they waved me off. Said they were following HOA orders and had permits. The HOA president, a slick guy named Gary, brushed me off too. He told me their lawyers had checked everything and assured me I didn't understand how the zoning lines worked. But I did. I understood it better than he did, and I had the receipts. That's when I decided to wait. Every home they built, every yard they landscaped, every driveway they poured made my case stronger. I documented everything. I didn't argue, didn't shout, just let them keep digging their own hole. And oh, they dug it deep, as construction wrapped up and families started moving in. The HOA threw a big ribbon-cutting ceremony, news crews, local officials, the whole 9 yards. I stood at the back, quiet, watching Gary give interviews like he'd just built a new empire. What none of them knew was that a good chunk of that empire stood on ground I still legally owned. And while the cameras flashed, I was already working with a quiet but sharp real estate attorney who specialized in land disputes. We were building our case slowly, methodically. No threats, no drama. Just facts and paperwork. Behind the scenes, I started hearing whispers. One of the subcontractors, a concrete guy named Ray, reached out. Said he'd noticed the survey flags didn't match up with the blueprints. He brought me photos, timestamps, even GPS pins showing exactly where his team poured foundations, several of which were clearly on my property. He told the HOA, but they shrugged it off and told him not to worry. That was the first crack in their armor. Then came a young couple, Sarah and James. They just bought one of the homes, excited for their first place together. But within weeks, they were getting strange notices from the county about a title discrepancy. Their mortgage company was spooked. They knocked on my door, confused and frustrated. I didn't have the heart to lay the whole mess on them yet. But I told them what I could, that something was wrong with how the land was sold, and I was trying to fix it. I wasn't after them. I was after the people who knew better and pushed forward anyway. Meanwhile, Gary kept acting like nothing was wrong. He sent me a cease and desist when word got out that I'd been speaking with homeowners, but that only made me dig deeper. I started looking into how the HOA got approval in the first place, and that's when things really started to unravel. Permits rushed, zoning approvals mysteriously fast-tracked, and connections between the HOA board and local officials that didn't sit right. Something shady was going on. I was just getting started. As the weeks went on, the tension thickened, like fog. More homeowners were getting unexpected letters, some from the county, others from their lenders. Rumors spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. People started questioning the HOA, asking where their property lines really were, why their titles were getting flagged, and what the strange man at the end of the road, me, had to do with it all. Gary tried to hold it all together, but cracks were showing. At HOA meetings, he looked more anxious, less smug. His voice wavered. Homeowners wanted answers, and I knew those answers were coming. Behind the scenes, my attorney filed a quiet title action, and it triggered a chain reaction. Title insurance companies were pulled in. Lenders started reevaluating risks. Some homes were now uninsurable. At least 27 of the 96 houses had driveways, decks, or entire rooms sitting squarely on my land. And that wasn't even counting the shared roads and trails the HOA had carved through what they assumed was common space. Every inch of it was documented, dated, and legally supported. But here's the kicker. When we dug through the zoning records, we uncovered something bigger. A land assessor's report, signed off 3 years ago, had a forged signature. The surveyor listed was real, but he had no record of ever working that job. I reached out to him personally. He was shocked, said someone had used his name without permission. That discovery turned this from a property dispute into potential fraud, and the county couldn't ignore it any longer. One morning, a county investigator knocked on my door. Not to question me, but to get a copy of all the records I'd been collecting. Turns out I wasn't the only one looking into Gary and the HOA board. And just like that, the story went from a quiet land mistake to something much bigger, something that could shake the whole community, and possibly even the people in city planning. And then came the notice. A certified letter addressed to me. Marked urgent. I opened it slowly. The contents nearly made me laugh because it proved what I'd suspected all along. They knew, and now they were scrambling. The letter wasn't from the HOA or the city. It was from a private development firm I'd never heard of. The name sounded polished, corporate, and entirely out of place in a small-town land mess like this. Inside was a formal request to enter into immediate negotiations for an emergency purchase agreement. They were offering to buy the disputed portion of my land at more than double market value. No questions asked, no inspections, just a fast, clean deal. That's when it hit me. Gary hadn't just made a mistake. He'd been working with developers behind the scenes the entire time. Turns out this firm had funded most of the HOA's expansion project. They weren't just silent investors, they were the ones pulling the strings. Gary was just the local face, the distraction. And now, With legal trouble brewing and fraud possibly surfacing, they were doing damage control. This wasn't just a land grab gone wrong, it was a full-blown scheme to quietly absorb neighboring plots under the radar and flip the entire subdivision to a bigger commercial buyer once it was complete. But they messed with the wrong parcel. I didn't respond to the letter. Instead, I brought it straight to my lawyer and the county investigator. That's when things really started moving. The county launched a deeper probe, not just into the HOA, but into how permits were granted, who signed off on what, and where the money was coming from. The deeper we looked, the more unsettling it got. There were off-the-record land transfers, missing pages in public records, and even anonymous campaign donations traced back to shell companies linked to the same development firm. Meanwhile, homeowners started organizing. People who were once silent began demanding answers. Some even showed up at Gary's house, wanting to know why their homes might not be legally theirs. Lawsuits were being whispered about. Title insurers froze several properties. And through it all, I stayed quiet, watching, waiting, because I knew the moment of reckoning was close. They thought buying me out would solve everything. But they still didn't understand the one thing that made all the difference. I was never in this for the money. The tipping point came on a rainy Thursday morning when a notice was posted at the front of the subdivision. An official county order halting all property transfers within the HOA until a full investigation was completed. Homeowners flooded the streets demanding answers. Gary was nowhere to be found. The HOA board members tried to hold an emergency meeting, but it got ugly fast. People were furious about the titles, the construction, the lies. It wasn't just about property anymore. It was about trust, and that had shattered completely. A week later, Gary resurfaced, but not at a meeting. He was escorted by 2 county officers out of his office in front of a stunned crowd. Charges were filed: fraud, forgery, conspiracy to mislead public officials. It wasn't just him either. 2 city employees connected to the zoning department were also under investigation for rubber stamping permits tied to the fake surveys. The development firm. They vanished behind a wall of silence, pulling out of several pending land deals in other parts of the state. But the damage was done. As for me, I filed a civil suit, and the court ruled in my favor. The court confirmed that a significant section of the subdivision, nearly 40 homes, had been built on land that still legally belonged to me. And here's the twist. Instead of forcing families out, I offered them a choice. Pay a small monthly lease and stay, or let the HOA repurchase the land under proper terms. Most chose to stay. The lease income now covers my taxes and then some. I didn't need to sell a thing. I simply turned their mess into my gain. But the final surprise. That same land the developers once tried to quietly steal, well, after the scandal, its value tripled. Everyone had tried to buy me out before, hoping I'd cave. I never did. And now, the one piece of land they underestimated is the one thing holding their whole neighborhood together. Funny how things turn out. Since that day, life's been a little quieter and a lot more interesting. The HOA is now under new leadership, with a board made up of actual homeowners who care about transparency and community, not backroom deals. Gary took a plea deal and disappeared from the public eye. And the shady development firm was barred from doing business in the county for the foreseeable future. The county cleaned house too, tightening their oversight on zoning and permit approvals. People finally started paying attention to how things get done behind closed doors. As for me, I still walk the same trails my grandfather once did, only now with a deeper sense of why the land matters. It's not just about property lines or money. It's about legacy, integrity, and standing your ground when no one thinks you will. That little piece of forest and hill became a symbol of something bigger, a reminder that doing things the right way still matters, even when others Cut corners. Some of the homeowners who once gave me sideways looks now wave when they see me. A few have even become friends. Sarah and James. They're still living there, and they even planted a small garden in their yard this spring. We laugh now about those early days, but they still shake their heads at how close they came to losing everything. This whole HOA land dispute taught me more than I expected, not just about property law or title records, but about patience, persistence, and the power of letting people show you who they really are. They built 96 homes on my land, thinking I'd never notice. But I did. And in the end, they walked straight into a trap they built themselves. All I had to do was wait.